Hey, how do you feel about some high rarity cards, or maybe some foreign ones, or maybe be ahead of the game with others by preparing for future set releases with very quick shipping? Check out EJ Gaming and use code British5 on checkout for 5% off on all your orders. Link in the description.
Greetings, duelists, and welcome to another video. This past week, we have been talking about a lot of decks and strategies that are going to be relevant after the release of Age of Overlord. There are still a lot of cards that we haven't covered yet. There are still some cards that are very significant, very important to learn and how to play around. And I figured instead of making a video dedicated to just a one or two cards, I should just do showing you dueling book replays involving duels that I've had with other people testing post Age of Overlord. That way, not only do you get to see the new cards and see my thoughts on them and see the explanation behind how those cards work, but at the same time you also get to see actual examples of an environment where these cards are going to be relevant and what you need to do to play around them. After this release of Age of Overlord, some of these cards that you will be seeing in these duels, you will be seeing them a lot. So it's very important to just learn and understand and see how cards interact and how things go in the flow of certain duels. So the first duel I'm gonna show is against Tonio924. He's playing Dragon Link. We're still playing the Horus Runic deck. I think the last video I did, or the second to last video, I profiled a showcase involving the runic strategy in the Horus archetype and the synergy that there is between them both. So the Dragon Link player goes first. He goes and does red ice things. He activates regain puts striker dragon back. I'm not going to explain too much about the dragon cards, because if you played against Dragon Link, you've probably already seen this a lot by now. I don't have any hand traps. I don't have any cards to interact with the following plays that he's doing. So if you're curious on one certain play that he's doing, just feel free to pause the video and just see what's going on. But yeah, basically he's doing everything you would expect from the dragon deck. The only difference here is that now, you're post Age of Overlord, you're going to be seeing this a lot. Instead of going through, for Boral End or Boral Savage, you're going to see IP Masquerena, because as you guys already know, there's a new card that's coming out in Age of Overlord, and that card has a lot of synergy with IP Masquerena. It pretty much turns this dragon board astronomically stronger than it was ever before the release of this set. So we draw for turn, we drew Kabesanov. We activate Dispelling to summon the Sleipnir. The reason for Sleipnir summon here is because even the off chance he wants to contest with IP, we can chain the Sleipnir effect. At this current moment, there's no cards on the board that will negate the Sleipnir effect if I were to do Sleipnir. So the worst case scenario would be this pattern, but right now we don't have any cards banished as of yet, so we don't have to worry about this pattern effect. In the off chance that he changed the Heretic Seal, we can also change the Sleipnir. So that was my thought process at the time. It is a very risky play because I am losing my battle phase at the moment. Another thing that could be done in hindsight was entering the battle, try to shake off the IP and enter the battle phase and try to make Gary to just swing over IP. That was another play that we could have done, but I figured I'd do the Sleipnir play because it also interacts with other cards that he has currently on the board in the off chance he does decide to use them. So he activates the regain brings back Magnamut. We activate Runic Fountain and we try to use the Smiting Storm. And right here we use the Fountain effect. The reason we're doing Fountain here is because my opponent still doesn't know we have Slumbering Hand, so they do not know that we can still activate Fountain if he resolves the Heretic Seals. and I figured this was a perfect moment to do so because it baits out the seal. In the option he tries to do IP, we can just chain the Sleipnir like we mentioned earlier. So he does Fierce. We chain the Sleipnir because we're unsure if he's actually going to bounce the Fountain or not. I figured it was the right play at the time, and in the off chance that he actually does the Sleipnir actually resolves, we just get rid of the Dispatter, and if he wants to link away the Dispatter, he's forced to use the IP in this chain. Sadly, he had Forbidden Droplet. That is one card we didn't play around. It's very unsure if people are going to have this on their deck or not. Some people play this, some people play Imperm, some people play both. We do see 2 Imperms banished, so that's another thing that we took into consideration. The odds of having a third one set were not really high. That regardless, he did have the droplets, and that's very unfortunate because it means that it stops the Sleipnir. So the Fountain is bounced, the Sphere gets summoned, and he summons the Dragon Maid and grabs Tidine as the follow-up for next turn. So now, I activate the Sarcophagus. The reason I'm doing the Sarcophagus play and not activating Runick Fountain again is because he doesn't know about the Slumber, which means that the Fountain can resolve for drawing 3, meaning that we could draw into another piece of interaction that can help pick apart their board. In the options, he does let the Horus card resolve, then we're going to be summoning something from the extra deck that is going to be very, very relevant here. So we do Sarcophagus. I activate to dump the 2 Horuses. He asks if the summons do start a chain. I tell them that they do not. So that's a very important tip for everybody. People who are watching this duel, people who are learning out of stuff from Age of Overlord. The Horus monsters do not trigger a chain in order for their summons to occur. I dumped Happy and not Imseti because I figured that he would have more Bestials on the hand. It's something that's really common when we see with Dragon decks. That being said, he does Druid's Worm and he activates Druid's Worm, banishing the Heretic Seal. He now does Brander Regain to recover, and now he activates IP. And this is the part where this is relevant. Now he summons SP Little Knight. This is what I meant by IP being more relevant in the Dragon deck. Now a lot of people are going to incorporate IP as part of their end board because SP Little Knight is going to be everywhere. So now IP is a lot more impactful than she was before because now this SP is going to contest with 1 card on the board, and in the options I try to retaliate, she can reply with another effect, which means tagging herself out and another monster, as long as one of the monsters tagged out are from their side of the field. So yeah, I'm not going to talk a lot about this card. I think there's a lot of YouTubers who already pretty much covered everything that has to do involving this card. I'm just showing you a game involving this card's interaction. That way you are more familiar with this scenario. This scenario with the Dragon deck, you're going to see it a lot. It is not going to be the only time you're going to be seeing this. So this is something to just be prepared for. So he does SP effect to banish the Sarcophagus, and he does the Druid's Worm effect to just send the Kabesanov to the graveyard. Now I activate Fountain and I activate Slumber. He doesn't have anything on the board at this current moment that can interact with this interaction. So now I'm just going to do this. We banished 3 from their deck, and now we're just going to return 3 and draw 3. And we drew into Volcanic Shell and Imseti. This is a really, really strong combination. Now what's gonna happen is we're going to start rolling advantage. So the Sarcophagus gets added. We draw into droplets. We're activating Volcanic Shell. We activate Sarcophagus. Sarcophagus dumps the shell. We're dumping Duamutef. And now we special 3. We figured there's probably no more Bestials in his hand. He already exhausted Magnamut and Druid's Worm is in graveyard. And Baldrake is still in the deck, but there are no Bestials that we need to worry about at this current juncture. So I summoned the 3 Horuses, and There's a couple of things we can do here. Um, we already summoned the Kebesanov, so sadly we cannot re-summon this Kebesanov. You can only special summon each Horus once per turn. Um, that being said, we activate the Upstart to see what we can draw. We draw into Runic Destruction. I tried to summon Tifon, however, I do immediately cash it and I put it back into the extra. The reason for that is because Tifon can only be summoned with the highest attack position monster. Now that you see this card on the board, we're going to talk about it. So basically what Stellar Nemesis Tifon does is that if your opponent special summoned from the extra deck at least more than once in the past like last 2 turns, you can special summon this using the highest attack position monster. If you do that, you cannot special summon any more monsters for the rest of this turn after you successfully XYZ summon this card. While this card is on the board, this XYZ summon card, neither player can activate monster effects of monsters that have 3,000 or more attack. So we run it back because we noticed that the summon was illegal. I just activated Runic Destruction, and now I summoned the Tifon. The reason why I did Tifon here was because when Tifon hits the board, he's forced to get rid of it by one mean or another, because the Dispatcher is now turned off and this card doesn't target. So if he's going to do SP Little Knight's effect, he has to do it right here, right now. Otherwise, the Tifon is going to resolve and he has no other interaction. So he changed the SP. He uses the effect targeting the Dispatcher and the Happy. So the reason he's doing this is because Happy does have the effect of just recovering 2 cards from the banished or graveyard. So that's going to be very, very relevant. Another reason for this is now I can no longer return the Dispatcher with the Doomsday Star. I'm forced to return either the SP or the Dragon Maid. So that being said, I resolved the Tifon effect and I returned the SP because the reason for returning SP is because if I let the SP not be interacted with, he's just gonna keep using her effect on the following turn whenever I try to interact with his board. And that's just going to be very strong for him because SP just makes it so Dispatcher gives it the extra ability to negate, like sending back my monsters that are banished. So that's another really strong thing about it. So now I do Imseti. Imseti sends the Dragon Maid. So because a card left the board, because of my opponent's card, the Imseti just takes a card out of the board. That's what's important about the Horus cards. Like when you're playing a deck like Runic, or you're trying to like force interactions against your opponent pretty much is in a position where they kind of have to get rid of stuff from your board, and that just plays into the Horus cards. But yeah. Now we go to end phase, and the Happy and the Dispatcher both return. Take note that this Dispatcher cannot be activated, and I realized later in the turn that Imseti couldn't be activated. So that's another 101 for everybody watching. As long as the Tifon is up on the board, neither player can activate monsters with 3,000 or more attack. That means the Imseti activation, sending the Dragon Maid, was an illegal activation. Therefore, we put it back on the board, and that's going to be relevant here because now that is just another body for him to use the Striker Dragon. In hindsight, what I should have done is instead of summoning the Stellar Nemesis, I should have just linked away the Imseti or linked away the Duamotef into SP Little Knight, because I am running SP in my extra deck. And the SP being summoned would have done 2 things. 1, it would have given me 2 interactions against my opponent, and 2, it would have gotten rid of the Sleipnir meaning that I had the golden droplet just to summon another runic monster as an interaction. That being said, I didn't do that, and as you will see, I am going to get punished by that. My opponent just summons SP again, and he used Striker Dragon. Now I activate Happy and Imseti. I'm doing Happy effect to return, and I'm doing Inseti effect to send. I chose Happy to be chaining too, because the cards that I try to grab out of Happy are not important. Like, they're not real value. The real value is actually this golden droplet resolving for Runic Fountain. But as we can see by our opponent's hand, he did drew into the Ash Blossom. And that's very, very, very unfortunate. That's pretty much going to secure him the game, because that means Runic Fountain cannot draw me into any interactions. And I won't have any more defensive plays against the rest of the things my opponent wants to do. Here my opponent realizes that Happy returns the cards to the hand. So that's another thing about Happy. You don't have to declare what you're doing with the cards that are banished. You just need to just target the cards, and your opponent has to assume that either you're returning them to the deck or you're returning them to your hand. That will come up, so be very, very mindful and wary of like Happy's effect whenever this card is activating, because this card can do a lot of things. Like, against like graveyard centric strategies like Dragonlink, for example, you can just return some of their cards that are in their graveyard. Against in your specific deck, like in the Horus deck, with the runic cards, is really, really strong as well, because you can just start grabbing cards back from the graveyard and banish, like I did with Sarcophagus and Upstart Goblin. So now I do Golden Droplet. I tried to do Fountain, and he has the Ash Blossom. And yeah, that's pretty much unfortunate. Now he's going to resolve his Dragon Link plays. He resolves the Levianeer. So he's trying to pop the Imseti with the Levianeer. This is another 101 for everybody watching. The Sarcophagus makes it so every Horus you control cannot be destroyed unless you target them specifically. So unless you're targeting them, you cannot mass destruction like the Runic, the Horus cards. So that was a misplay on my opponent's part. Now the viewer watching this duel can learn that interaction. This will come up a lot, not just with Levianeer. It will come up with stuff like Lightning Storm, stuff like stuff like other monsters that just do like massive board wipe effects, like stuff like Feather Duster and stuff like that. Just be wary that the Sarcophagus does have that effect, and the Horus monsters don't get destroyed. So now he summons Baron. Baron does target, so it can destroy the Imseti, like, sadly. He pops the Runic Sleipnir as well. And that's game. But yeah, that's the end of the duel. Unfortunately, a loss for us, but I will take any amount of losses if it means you, the viewer, learning from these duels and like understanding the interaction with certain cards and strategies. I think the Horus Runic deck is really, really strong. Like, I went second against the Dragon deck without any hand traps. And I didn't open any board breakers. I didn't open in like stuff like Talents or Dark Ruler or Lava Golem or stuff like that. So seeing the way this duel turned out, despite not having like non-engine cards, just kind of shows you how strong this deck can be if you just like draw the right cards for the right interactions. In the future, you can just incorporate like board breaking cards if you know that the dragon strategy is going to be like a lot more popular. We did lose the die rule, so that was another really, really important detail to take note of. I think if we go first, this deck is a lot more stronger and a lot harder to deal with. But yeah, nonetheless, this was a very good duel. I hope you found this video very informative. I hope you found this to your understanding. More Age of Overlord duels and replays and explanations coming soon. keep practicing and keep doing.